is the warmth of the people, and they're just genuine. So I'd say that would be the number one.
Our volunteers have become like family to me. I feel like they understand a huge part of my life now that people back home just won't understand.
I'd say IVHQ did a really good job at making me feel safe.
Volunteering has no age limit. So whatever you do, whether you're teaching school or I'm working now assisting a local dentist, I feel I'm contributing something.
Definitely the people here, they're very friendly.
Enjoy every minute of it because the time passes so quick.
My expectations when I came here, well, they were exceeded in that the family have been wonderful, and it felt very supportive.
And you get to really absorb the culture and the people. If you were to tour the country, like as a tourist, I don't think you'll have that opportunity as you would with volunteering and being part of the program.
The people. This is why I'm here. The people are just amazing.
If you have doubts, to just go. You have a great time. There's plenty of stuff to do. Been on safari, been to Zanzibar. There's so much to see here. It's beautiful. People are so nice.
Inviting. Everywhere you go, you're invited, you're invited. They just want to welcome you. It's lovely.
I'm here with Claire, our IVHQ Head of Programs, and Sammy, who is one of our IVHQ Africa Program Managers. Thanks to everyone for joining today. It looks like we've got an awesome crew from all around the world. That's I think the coolest thing about being based here in New Zealand and being able to connect with volunteers from all over the world. I think we've had volunteers from almost 100 different countries joining us, which is so cool. So let's kick into this webinar all about everything you need to know about volunteering in Africa. For those of you who don't know our backstory, we were started by Dan Radcliffe. He was a volunteer himself. After graduating from university, he landed a corporate job, lasted 4 days in the office before deciding that the corporate world really wasn't for him. So he decided to go back to his family farm and save some money to go overseas. And he thought that he really wanted to do something that would get him out of his comfort zone, enable him to do something meaningful, and maybe learn something about himself at the same time. And he had this idea that volunteering in Africa would be a really good fit. But when he started looking online, he was a bit disheartened to find that there weren't many opportunities available, and that the ones that were available were incredibly expensive. But he decided to front up with the money and go with an organisation to volunteer in Kenya. But when he arrived in Kenya, he wasn't picked up from the airport. And when he finally got to the school that he was going to be volunteering at, the school didn't even know he was going to be there. So he found the whole experience to be incredibly disorganised. And while he loved, being immersed in the community and the whole, experience that came with volunteering in Africa, he just thought the system was a bit broken, and he wanted to make volunteer travel a lot more accessible, affordable, and way better organised. And so the seeds of IVHQ were planted. Kenya was one of our very first IVHQ programs. Now, 15 years later, we have programs in over 50 different destinations, and we've supported more than 125,000 volunteers to volunteer abroad with IVHQ. So that's a pretty awesome achievement. And we've just released our latest impact report. So if you want to get an idea of the kind of impact that our volunteers are having in Africa and all around the world, head to our impact page. Now we're going to be sharing some helpful links as we go through the webinar in the chat. And we've just linked to the impact page if you want to check it out. And if you've got any questions as we're going through the webinar, please just pop them into the chat, and we'll have some time at the end to address them. Awesome. So today for the webinar, we're going to take you through all of our Africa programs and give you some guidance in terms of how to choose a program that's right for you. Then we'll go through some of the FAQs that have come through from those joining and share some insider insights from Claire and Sammy here. And then we'll jump into the FAQs at the end that have come through from the webinar today. Great. So as you can see, we've got a diverse range of destinations available to travellers that want to go and volunteer in Africa. I guess, but for a first timer travelling to Africa, these options can appear quite overwhelming. So Claire's going to take us through a high-level overview of how you can decide which location might be best for you.
Yeah, so no matter what you're looking for, we've pretty much got it covered from within our Africa programs. So depending on what you're looking for, if you've got any questions, you can send this through to the team here, and we'd be more than happy to help find the program that's best for you. So if you're looking for an authentic immersion experience, we recommend one of our programs in Kenya, Tanzania, Ghana, or Morocco. They all offer homestay accommodation, so that's a great opportunity to really live like a local for the time that you're there. Our Zambia program, while it has a volunteer house, still allows for that immersion experience because it's located in Livingston, which is quite a small area, and volunteers really get to take part in the community work there. Next, if you're a beach lover, one of our coastal locations would be South Africa. We've got two programs that operate in Cape Town itself on opposite sides of the city. And Cape Town is completely encircled by the coast, and it's got some of the best surfing you'll find. And if you're looking for an island lifestyle, Zanzibar and Madagascar are the ones to look at for you. They both are your accommodations right on the beach, and the sandy white beaches are absolutely pristine and amazing.
And our backdrop here is from the Outlook, from the volunteer accommodation in Madagascar, to give you a bit of an insight into what to expect on that program.
Yeah, and as well as obviously the community projects, we also have wildlife conservation projects that you can take part on in Victoria Falls and Kruger Park in South Africa.
Awesome. Now, Sammy, can you talk us through the types of volunteer opportunities that are available to volunteers in Africa?
Absolutely. I just wanted to say hi, everyone on the chat. I can recognize some of your names, so it's quite nice to have you here. We offer lots of different projects in Africa, anything ranging from teaching and childcare all the way through to construction and renovation. And you can see them all listed on your screen for you, but we'll also drop a link into the comments so that you can jump onto our website and see them as well there.
Awesome. Again, the link we'll be sharing helps you to come see all of the programs in Africa and then the different types of projects available in each destination. So that can be, if you've got a sort of a project in mind, that can be a good way to help filter through your options as well. Claire, talk us through the skills and qualifications that a volunteer needs to join IVHQ in Africa.
Yeah. So for most of the projects that volunteers are looking at, there aren't any specific skills or qualifications that are required, especially because you're working alongside placement staff who are there to guide you in the day-to-day tasks, and you've got the support of the local team as well. There are a few exceptions to that, such as the medical project, where you do need to have a certain level of your studies completed in order to be eligible. And we also have our marine conservation project in Madagascar, where you do need to be PADI certified to take part. And we also have it available in Zanzibar for those taking part for more than 2 weeks. But the great news is that you can actually do those while you're as part of your time on the program, and that's a lifetime certification.
Awesome. What about, we've had a few questions come through before the webinar in terms of programs for under 18s. Which programs in Africa can host under 18s?
Yeah, so we've got our programs in Zanzibar and also Tanzania, where volunteers who are under the age of 18 can take part independently. All of our programs are also open to families, and some as young as 2 years old can take part in some destinations.
Cool, and we've had a few questions come through around opportunities for older volunteers and retirees. Do we have many from those age groups joining us?
Yeah, absolutely. We have seen a huge shift in the last couple of years that we're having more mature volunteers coming and joining our programs. We've had volunteers in their 70s and 80s completing our programs in Tanzania, Zambia, and Big Falls, just to name a few, in the last 12 months.
Awesome. Cool. And Sammy, can you talk us through how much it costs to volunteer in Africa with IVHQ?
Yeah, so IVHQ offers some very affordable programs for volunteers to join. There are two separate fees that volunteers do pay. There's the registration fee, which covers your pre-departure support from IVHQ, and then there's the program fee, which covers your in-country support. Your in-country support includes your airport pickup, your meals, your accommodation, and the local team being there to guide you throughout the time in your program. And if for any reason you might need some help covering these costs, we do recommend volunteers take a look at our fundraising page. We've got lots of ideas there, and we'll pop a link into the comments for you as well.
Awesome. So yeah, we'll share a link to the fees page. So that's a good way to kind of navigate which programs are the most affordable. Which program is the cheapest in Africa? Zambia?
Yeah, so we've got Zambia, Tanzania, and South Africa that are all really, really affordable. So there's some volunteers.
And they start from as low as $22 a day, right?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
And the longer you stay, the cheaper the per day cost gets. Now, for those of you who don't know, the way that IVHQ works is we partner with local organisations at all of the locations where we offer volunteer programs. These local organisations are obviously in the best position to identify where the need is in the community and can place volunteers accordingly, organise safe accommodations, and obviously be there with you throughout your volunteer experience to ensure that you're comfortable and safe and well supported. Cool, and this is an overview of what the expenses that Sammy talked about that are covered in that program fee. So these are all the services that that local organisation provides to you. Cool. Now, Claire, can you talk us through what the accommodation is like in Africa? This is always a question that comes up.
Yeah, so the accommodation is as varied as our programs, and we've got lots of options that volunteers can choose from. We've got private rooms available in some destinations. We've got semi-permanent tents in Zanzibar, and then you can also look at Madagascar, where you're in like an authentic rustic open air hut, which is built into the mountain and the forest where the work takes place.
Awesome. And we've also got function on our website to search through options based on the accommodation type. So if you're looking for a private room and a private bathroom, we'll share a link to the guided search tool, and that can enable you to identify, okay, where can I go in Africa that provides the the private room and the private bathroom, for example. So that's a really handy tool if you've got some specific accommodation requirements in mind. Awesome. Sammy, can you talk us through what kind of food you can expect on the programs in Africa?
Yeah, absolutely. So our Africa programs offer a great mix of traditional local cuisine with your local home comforts. So in Ghana, Zanzibar, Morocco, you can truly taste the local authentic cuisine. The local teams will be able to provide you with that, but they'll also be able to provide you with the food that you're more used to. And our local teams always do try and cater for dietary requirements. So when you do apply, just note down any requirements that you may have, and we'll be happy to discuss those options with you.
Awesome. Claire, how long should you plan to volunteer in Africa if you're planning a trip with IVHQ?
Yeah, so the great thing about our programs is that we have options that begin at 1 week and go all the way up to 24 weeks, because we realise that some people only have a short duration that's available. But I will say that probably for all of our Africa programs, the most common feedback we get is, I wish I had spent longer there. And we have a huge number of volunteers who take part for a couple of weeks and then come back the next year for 6 or 8 weeks.
Yeah, awesome. I've been at IVHQ for 11 years now, and I think the thing that I always see come through from volunteers in Africa is that, Africa stole my heart and I can't wait to go back, and it was so hard to leave. And it's definitely one of those programs or those destinations that have a pretty profound impact on volunteers and probably travellers in general as well. Cool. Next question. Sammy, how do I stay safe and healthy while volunteering in Africa?
Yeah, so we do have lots of policies and protocols in place to ensure our volunteers are safe. The local team are there to support our volunteers 24/7 whilst they're in country, so you're never fully alone. And we do take biannual risk assessments of all of our programs, and we send over our IVHQ staff to go and check those programs out on a regular basis. Claire has visited all of these Africa programs, so she is in a good position to tell you exactly what that experience would be like for a solo female or someone who's a bit anxious about traveling whilst they're in country.
Awesome, because I think the solo female safety question is one that I saw came through in the registration for the webinar, so it'd be great to hear your thoughts on that, Claire.
Yeah, I do remember when I first started with IVHQ and I was going out on my first staff trip, I was a little bit nervous. I'd never been to Africa before, but as soon as I landed at the airport, the local team was right there. They were very visible. I also had a phone number just in case I couldn't see them, but I absolutely could. So they picked me up from the airport, took me directly to the accommodation, showed me around the local area so I knew where to get things before the orientation started the next day, introduced me to all the other volunteers who were there, and a large number of them were also solo volunteers who were taking part, which gave me a little bit of sense of camaraderie. And by the time you actually start, you're at your placement with them, you're at your accommodation with them, you do your free times activities with the other volunteers, and it's highly unlikely you actually be alone at any time during your time with the program.
Awesome. Sammy, can I volunteer in Africa if I don't speak the local language, or are you going to answer that one? Claire?
Yeah, I'll answer that one. So I said, so I visited the programs and I've never had any trouble only being able to speak English. For a lot of the African countries, English is actually one of their official languages, but it will be an official second language. For example, in Kenya and Tanzania, they also speak Swahili, but there's so many different dialects of Swahili. English is kind of the common thread that's spoken through all of them. So you absolutely won't have a problem if you can't speak the local language.
And what about free time activities? What's on offer in Africa?
There is an abundance of activities that are available in Africa. The first and the most obvious one that everybody wants to do, especially when you're in Central Africa, is the safari. We've got options going from like 1 day up to 7 days, depending on where you're taking part. But as well as that, obviously, you can go surfing in South Africa, and then you've obviously got Victoria Falls in Zambia, which is just an adventure playground, the Victoria Falls themselves. You can go visit that. Some of the accommodation pools where you can just chill out for the day, climb Mount Kilimanjaro. The options are actually endless.
And can you book things like safaris through IVHQ in advance of your trip, or do you have to wait until you get to the country?
Yeah, no, so our local teams, we've set it up so that all of our volunteers have the opportunity to add add-ons to their programs. And that means that you can actually plan everything and pay for everything before you go. So you don't have to worry about that extra added cost once you get there. And our local teams are still really flexible. If you book something and then, you might change your mind, or there's more volunteers doing something else, you can always change over to that once you're there and cross credit over those funds.
Awesome. Well, now, so I've decided I want to volunteer in Africa. What's the process? Where to go to from here?
Yeah, so it's a really simple process. Just jump onto our website and there's a big apply now button. The application takes around 5 to 10 minutes and it's totally commitment and cost free. So there's no stress in applying. If you're not quite sure what you're doing, just pop your application through anyways, and you can always make changes later. That application will be handed over to the programs team, and they will review the application and they'll let you know the status of your application and if they have any questions or anything. And then from there, you'll be allocated to your designated program manager, who will be there to support you throughout your entire time before you depart and join the program, and they'll help you to secure your spot. And then pretty much from there, it's just about getting the preparation started.
Awesome. Now, one of the related questions that's come through on that, Sammy, is how far in advance do you need to apply? So
this is a difficult one because we obviously understand that volunteers may have may be able to plan things far in advance, but other volunteers may have a much shorter time frame. A lot of our Africa programs can accept volunteers at quite a last minute. And you've also, if you're wanting to go in a few weeks, you can certainly still apply. I would always recommend applying as soon as you can, just because it does secure your spot. And it does, once you've registered, lock in those current fees. But generally, if it's anything that's a bit last minute, I would still say get your application in as soon as possible. And your program manager will be able to let you know if there's any time constraints or any issues there.
Awesome. Now, shall we launch in? We've got about 10 minutes for Q&A and lots of great questions coming through. So I've got all of these written down. Thank you, Ivana. Let's kick off with, which programs would you suggest for a 62-year-old who works in education?
So a great option would be looking at your Tanzania or your Zambia program. Tanzania has the homestay accommodation, which we often find that more mature volunteers are more comfortable in. And Zambia, we have the option for accommodation upgrades into private rooms. And at both locations, you can work on teaching projects within the local community.
Awesome. What is the safest program for young women?
Well, as we covered earlier, safety is, absolutely paramount to both IVHQ and our local team. If you've got any specific safety concerns, just reach out and we'd be more than happy to answer those. But I can assure you that all of our programs are safe for young volunteers to join.
Awesome. And is this meeting going to be uploaded somewhere? Yes, it will. We will share a link to everyone who signed up via the registration page. If you haven't signed up, just email us at info@volunteerhq.org and we can just we'll share the link with you there. What healthcare options are available in case of illness? So if someone got sick while they were volunteering in Africa, what's the process?
Yeah, sure. So, as I said, you've got the 24/7 contact for the local team. So the most important thing is, as soon as you're not feeling unwell, reach out to them, let them know so that they can help. They have doctors that they can book you an appointment for, and at all locations, of course, there is hospitals. And the most important thing from the volunteer perspective is making sure that you have your travel insurance information printed out and handy. So in the unlikely event you do need that, you can provide that over straight away.
Awesome. I guess that's reassuring to know, if you're traveling solo, you're not going to have that kind of level of support and know which, where to go in terms of the local hospitals. I know that's quite a challenging thing to navigate. So that's a real bonus, I guess, of going through IVHQ. How easy is it to get a visa for Ghana?
Yeah. The visa processes for all these programs do vary. There are certain programs where the process can take a couple of weeks. Once you have registered, you'll have access to your program guide, which contains a lot of information to help you prepare to get your visa. And many of our programs were able to offer assistance in the form of sort of an invitation letters to support your application. But we generally do recommend speaking to the relevant embassy for the destination that you're going to, just to ensure that you will fit all the requirements to get that visa. But once you have registered, your program manager will be able to walk you through the steps of that.
Awesome. And projects for families, which ones would we recommend?
Yeah, so our recommendation really would depend on the age of the children in the families. If you've got younger children, a childcare project is great because the parents can actually go in there and volunteer in the class. And if you've got a very young child, they just join in and they can make some friends and interact with the children in the class. If you've got children that's sort of like 10 and 11, they can actually take part and volunteer with you on the childcare project. If you've got kids who are like 15, 16, they might not be interested in looking after little ones, but that's where we've got construction and renovation, agriculture, and other sort of outdoorsy projects, as well as sports and things like that they could join you on.
Awesome. Is there always space available?
No, there is not always space available. So there is limitations on the number of volunteers that our local team can have on a program at a time. That can be down to the number of beds they've got in an accommodation, but also some of the projects do have limitations, because we obviously want to make sure that the volunteers are making an impact while they're there. And, you know, by doing that, we do have to limit the numbers in a classroom or on a specific project. So that's why, as Sammy said, as soon as you're interested, submit your application. We can check these sorts of things and let you know.
Awesome, thanks, Claire. And we've got a question around, is the registration fee a one-time fee?
Yeah, so there is a registration fee attached to any program that a volunteer takes part on. The main reason for that is, as we mentioned, it covers the pre-departure support. So the pre-departure support is different for every program because the information we provide in your program guide over the phone and emails is unique for every program. So as such, that is what that covers. Of course, you do get a 10% discount as a returning volunteer. So when you take part in your second program, that's automatically discounted. And if you've taken part in a program, you actually also have a unique referral code. So any volunteers that you refer to us, you can also get a discount for your next program by them using that.
Awesome. And can you go from one program to another while in Africa? E.g. South Africa for 30 days and then Madagascar for 30 days?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of people who take part on more than one program because for some of them, traveling to Africa is a once in a lifetime experience. We can help you line up your programs so you can do them back to back, or you can have a break in the middle of them. And, you know, we've got programs that are located, you know, in countries right next to each other. And even if you're looking at, you know, wanting to do something community-based and something with animals, the Zambia program and the Victoria Falls Wildlife Conservation Program are about 20 minutes away from each other. So you couldn't get any easier of a transit between two locations.
But have a completely different experience at the same time.
Very
right?
different experience.
And I like the idea of combining South Africa with Madagascar as well. Like, again, those are two, you know, they're both in Africa, but two incredibly diverse, different locations. What is a typical schedule like? Yeah, that's a question that always comes through. Like, what can I expect? What does a day in the life look like as a volunteer in Africa? Maybe talk through the experience of a volunteer on a teaching or childcare project in Tanzania, and we can compare that to maybe like a marine conservation volunteer in Madagascar.
Yeah, so again, that's vary from project to project, but generally for a sort of teaching, childcare, school-based placement, you can expect to follow the school hours. So you'll wake up in the morning, have your breakfast at the volunteer accommodation, and then you make your way to placement. You probably volunteer for 1 or 2 hours before a break. You'll have a break, and then you'll return back into the classroom. Some projects do have volunteers staying a little bit later to do some lesson planning, but generally you'll finish when the school day finishes, and you'll be able to return back to the volunteer accommodation or go and do some activities in your free time. For the projects that are more conservation based, for example in Madagascar, the marine conservation, it would look slightly different. These projects do operate on a kind of shift basis, so there may be a morning shift or a later afternoon shift. It does depend on the tides in Madagascar, which aren't always easy to predict or to control. But if you have a morning shift, for example, you may get up around 5 a.m., do your dive, but then you'll have your entire afternoon free, or it may be the opposite. The local team do try to change this up, so you're not spending every day getting up first thing in the morning, and you can get a bit of a mix so that you can have some sleep-ins and have some afternoon activities.
Awesome. Another question around vaccinations for Zanzibar, but why don't we cover off vaccinations in general? What vaccinations do you need for volunteering in Africa?
Yeah, so there aren't, for most of the destinations, there aren't any required vaccinations to enter them. The only one you need to keep in mind sometimes is a yellow fever, and that is more based on your path of travel to get to the location. But we provide volunteers with all of the information once they're registered in the program guide. It's got a list of any that are required, as well as all the recommended vaccinations. And we just think you should go out and speak with your travel doctor. They're best placed to provide you with the information, you know, based on your medical history and where you're going.
Awesome. Good question. So once you're in a location, can you extend your stay?
Yeah, absolutely. As we mentioned, though, we do have, limits on the number of people in there. So it is just subject to availability. So we recommend as soon as you get there and you decide, wow, this is amazing, I want to stay 2 more weeks, speak to the local team so that they can arrange that for you. And any difference in the program fee you've paid to IVHQ already, you just make up with the local team there.
Perfect. And what about internet access? What's that like? We've got a question specific to Zambia. What's internet access like in Zambia?
Yeah, so it's kind of up to the volunteers how they choose to access. So all of the, in Zambia within Livingston, there's cafes, restaurants, bars, all that sort of thing. They've all got Wi-Fi, and there's a small shopping mall there that also has Wi-Fi. You can also purchase a local SIM card, and that gives you a local number. It gives you local data, and you can choose between calling, texting, or just being able to, surf the web.
Awesome. And is that for all locations? Is that generally the best recommendation to purchase a local SIM card, or are there programs where they have Wi-Fi at the accommodation, for example?
Yeah, so we do have some of them. So in Zanzibar, they have it for the Turtle and Coastal Conservation Project, and in Victoria Falls, they also have it there. If you're in homestay accommodation, obviously often the family has that, so you can hook into that. But we do still recommend a SIM card if you're going to want to use Wi-Fi while you're out and about and not have to search for an internet cafe or things like that. And SIM cards normally cost like $3 to $5, so they're incredibly affordable and easy to do. You just need to make sure your phone is unlocked to accept an international SIM card before you leave home, but your local provider can help you with that.
Perfect. And with the guided search tool on IVHQ's website, you can select Wi-Fi, right, as a filter to look at where which programs in Africa have Wi-Fi in the accommodation. So that's a good tip if that's an important aspect for you. Are there leaders of each volunteer program?
Yes, so our local teams really provide volunteers with the assistance and the guidance, and depending on the size of the program, there may be a few local coordinators, upwards of there, and each one of those kind of looks after a project. So you do have someone who's kind of designated on the local staff and the local team to provide you with that guidance. And as I said, there's also the placement staff working alongside.
Awesome. Now we've gone a couple of minutes over time. We've got a few more questions coming through, so we'll just take a few more. Is there any way, this is a really good question, and I wanted us to cover this off, so it's come through. Is there any way to contact volunteers who have gone on IVHQ and the programs before?
Yeah, there are a couple of ways. I would first check out our website. We've got an entire review section there from past volunteers, and we are also externally reviewed by other websites that you can find on our website. But generally, I would direct volunteers to our Facebook pages. We've got a general IVHQ Facebook group, which you can join, and you can talk to other past or upcoming volunteers. And each individual Africa program or each individual IVHQ program has its own Facebook page. So you just have to search IVHQ and then the name of the destination. So IVHQ Ghana, for example, submit your request, and the program manager, who's the admin of that page, will be able to accept you in. You can have a scroll down and read previous volunteers' comments or questions. And if you feel brave enough, you can post your own as well.
Awesome. And we'll pop a link in, if we haven't already, to the General International Volunteer HQ Facebook group, which is a great place to start if you're not quite sure where you want to go yet. Now, I saw a question coming through around recommendations for someone who is over 60. They missed out on the response there. So that was basically use the guided search tool, right? And if accommodation, private room, private bathrooms are important to you, pop that into our guided search tool. You'll find the link in our chat feed from this webinar. And we'll also send out a list of these helpful links too, and that can help you filter through options.
Yeah, and our team is always just a phone call away. So if you ever aren't able to find anything on the website or not sure what you're looking for, give us a call. We're open 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, New Zealand Standard Time.
Awesome. A few more questions here. Okay, what does the Women's Empowerment Program in Kenya offer? Like, what kind of courses are taught through that program?
Yeah, so the courses vary throughout different times of the year, but the aim of the project and the aim of the placement is to empower women to be able to become self-sufficient. A lot of them left education at a very young age and have been left to look after their children for a variety of reasons. So they don't have the education level to necessarily go out and get a job in an office or, something along those lines. So they teach them sort of like you can do leather work, You also teach them microfinancing so that they know how to run books. They make their own jewellery and things like that that they then sell at a roadside stall there. So it encompasses everything from like what they're going to sell right up to how to be sustainable as a small business. So there's a huge variety of work that takes place there.
Awesome. One question, are there any ethical challenges? I guess, can you talk us through, Claire, what we do to ensure these, the placements are ethical and the programs are ethically run?
Yeah, so as we mentioned earlier, we have risk assessments that are completed, biannually by our local teams there on the ground. And as part of that, obviously, we're always looking at our placements and making sure they're ethical. IVHQ goes out and assesses all the placements. We always make sure that they are registered with the government and that, if it's a school, it's following the curriculum, the teachers are all registered, things along those lines. So we always make sure that they're also sustainable and that we're going to be working somewhere where we're going to see an impact in the long term. We're not just going somewhere where, after a couple of weeks, the volunteers move on somewhere else. We have a constant rolling number of volunteers coming through where one leaves off, another one begins.
And through partnering with IVHQ, these local organisations that we work with that place volunteers in the local placements are able to have a sustainable volume of volunteers coming throughout the year, so they can, provide a sustainable volume of support through to these placements. So that's it's pretty awesome to see these really grassroots organisations be able to really grow and spread their impact within their local community through the partnership with IVHQ. I've been and set up a few of our programs in the past, and now to see where they're at today is pretty inspiring. Again, a great perk of working at IVHQ and being able to see the kind of impact that we were able to support directly.
Yeah, and being locals, they're best placed to know where the need is in their own communities. They plan all the placements, they work with the locals there. And obviously by having the projects there, we also stimulate employment in the local community.
Awesome. And I guess the important thing to note also is that our volunteers never replace paid employment. They're there to work alongside locals, scale up the impact, but we're never taking jobs away from local people. Absolutely. If you go to 5 locations, do you need to pay 5 registration fees? Yes, Claire covered that before. So you do need to pay 1 registration fee per program. However, as a returning volunteer, you do get a discount for each subsequent program that you join. And if you refer others, you can also earn further credit to help reduce the cost of your own trip too.
Something good just to pop in there is if you're interested in doing 2 different types of projects, but you're happy to stay in the same destination. So if you want to do a week on childcare followed by maybe a week on sports, there are quite a few of our Africa programs where that's possible. And in that situation, because it's the same country, you'd only need to pay the 1 registration fee, but then you'd be able to try out some different kinds of projects when you're there.
Awesome, that's a great point, Sammy. So we'll cover 2 more questions and then we better wrap up because we have gone over time, and I know you guys have got lots of volunteers to get back to. Do we get help with booking flights?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a flight partner who provides volunteers with no obligation quote once they're registered. But as well as the actual booking of the flight, we also provide you with the information on where to arrive, when to arrive, to make sure you get that pickup. Any extra nights that you might want to, if you arrive early or depart late, we're here to help with all of that,
all the logistics. Perfect. And best program for someone who's 50 plus?
Yeah, so we've already mentioned the Zambia and the Tanzania programs due to the setup of them, but I mean, all of our programs are absolutely excellent for volunteers of all ages. We've got lots of options that are available. The most important thing is that, you tell us what you're looking for in a destination and we'll find the best match for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Claire. Thanks, Sammy. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Great conversations going on, and we really want to, continue these webinars. We'd love to learn what kind of topics you're interested in hearing. So if you drop us an email, ellen@volunteerhq, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks again. And if you've got any questions about our programs, want to give us a call, feel free to do so. All of our contact details are on volunteerhq.org, our website. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.